Hello everyone and welcome to EverlastCyber. In today's video, we'll be going through some practice questions and answers for the Certified in Risk and Information Systems Control certification. These questions emphasize the key aspects of risk management, including compliance, incident response, and business continuity. So we're going to kick off with question 1. Diamond Bank PLC outsources a critical IT service to a third-party vendor. The vendor is in a region prone to natural disasters. As the risk manager, what is your most immediate step in assessing the risks associated with this vendor? A. Conduct a business impact analysis. B. Review the vendor's disaster recovery plan. C. Ensure that the vendor has appropriate insurance coverage. D. Conduct an on-site audit of the vendor's data centers. In this scenario, the most immediate action would be to review the vendor's disaster recovery plan. And this will help to understand how they plan to recover from natural disasters. And this can directly impact your organization's critical services. While conducting a business impact analysis and on-site audit is very important, assessing the disaster recovery plan will address the specific risk in this scenario. So as we all know, a business impact analysis will help to identify and evaluate the potential effects of a disruption to the critical IT services. The analysis will allow you to understand the consequences of service interruption and the urgency of the services, which is crucial given the vendor's location in a region prone to natural disasters. So for this, we'll be going with option B, reviewing the vendor's disaster recovery plan. This should be the most immediate action to address the risk that we have in this given scenario. Now, if we look at the options we have here, option A seems like the correct answer. However, our answer here will be option B, and I'll give a brief explanation. Since the vendor is in a region that is prone to natural disasters, understanding their disaster recovery strategy is crucial in order to assess how well they can continue to operate in the event of a disaster. Business impact analysis is important, quite alright, for understanding the broader implications of potential service disruptions. However, reviewing the vendor's disaster recovery plan is more immediately relevant to the specific risk that has been presented in this case. In the question, we see that we already know that the vendor is in a region that is prone to natural disasters. So that's why we're going with option B, which is reviewing the vendor's disaster recovery plan. This will help you to understand how the vendor plans to respond to potential disasters, and this is crucial for assessing your organization's risk. The information will help you to determine whether the vendor's plan is sufficient to protect your services and consequently your customers. Question 2. During the planning phase of a new software development project, the project manager identifies that tight deadlines may lead to a compromise in the software's security testing. As the risk professional, what is the best approach to address this risk? A. Extend the deadline to allow for more thorough testing. B. Perform a qualitative risk analysis. C. Implement compensating controls. D. Add more resources to the testing phase. Extending the deadline would allow for more testing, however, it may not always be feasible. Performing a qualitative risk analysis can help assess the risk, but it does not directly mitigate it. Implementing compensating controls, on the other hand, focuses on putting additional measures in place to mitigate the risks associated with potentially insufficient security testing due to the tight deadlines. While adding more resources to the testing phase may help, it does not guarantee that the security testing will be thorough or effective. So in this scenario, we'll be going with option C. Compensating controls can include measures like enhanced monitoring, automated testing tools, or increased code reviews that will help ensure security without requiring extensive additional time for testing. Question 3. Which document is considered the greatest reference for all risk-related information supporting decisions on risk response activities and their prioritization? A. Risk register. B. Risk assessments. C. Risk analysis documents. D. Business impact analysis. The risk register is considered the most comprehensive reference document for all risk-related information. Risk assessment, business impact analysis, and the other documents provides valuable input into understanding risks. However, it is the risk register that serves as the central repository for all information on risks and their statuses. It is used to track identified risks, their analysis, and the corresponding risk response strategies. So it will help in the prioritization of risk response activities, making it a key tool for decision making in risk management. Question 4. Diamond Bank PLC experiences a data breach affecting sensitive customer information. Based on the bank's risk management policy, you must decide how to notify the affected customers while balancing legal requirements and brand reputation. What should you do first? A. Notify all affected customers immediately. B. Evaluate legal and regulatory requirements for breach notification. C. Initiate a public relations campaign to manage the situation. D. Consult the organization's legal team before proceeding. If we look at all the options here, we'll be going with option B. Before notifying customers, you need to ensure that the bank complies with the legal and regulatory requirements, which can vary depending on the jurisdiction and the nature of the data breach. Now, once the legal implications are clear, then appropriate actions can be taken, including informing the customer. So once you understand the legal and regulatory requirements for breach notification, it is crucial to ensure compliance and to determine the appropriate steps for notifying the affected customers. This evaluation will guide how and when to notify the customers in order not to create panic and also to secure the brand reputation. And it will also help to balance the legal obligations with the bank's reputation. So the first thing that should be done is to evaluate the legal and regulatory requirements for breach notification. Question 5. After a recent security breach, it's been discovered that several high-impact risks went undetected in your organization's risk register. What should be your first action to improve the risk management process? A. Perform a gap analysis to identify missing controls. B. Update the risk register with newly identified risks. C. Implement additional security tools to detect risks. D. Review and improve the risk identification process. While performing a gap analysis and updating the risk register with the newly identified risks are important actions, these are not the first steps that should be followed. Implementing security tools can also help with detection, but it will not resolve the underlying issue in the risk management process. So the first action that should be taken will be option D. Review and improve the risk identification process. If the critical risks were not detected, it indicates a weakness in the risk identification process. So improving this process will help to ensure that future risks are recognized and properly documented in the risk register. So once the identification processes are improved, other steps such as updating the register and enhancing controls can then follow. Question 6. Your organization lacks an up-to-date asset inventory and you've been tasked with identifying all IT assets. What should be your first step? A. Interview department heads to identify critical assets. B. Conduct a network scan to identify all connected devices. C. Review historical assets purchase orders. D. Implement an asset management tool. For this, we'll be going with option B, and I'll give a brief explanation. So a network scan will provide a comprehensive overview of all the devices that are currently connected to the network. It will also establish a baseline for your IT assets. This step is very important because it can uncover assets that may not have been documented or known to various departments. Now, after the network scan, you can then follow up with interviews to identify the critical assets and understand their importance to the organization. Reviewing the historical assets purchase orders can also help to create a more complete inventory, but it is less effective without first identifying what is currently in use. Also, implementing an asset management tool can be beneficial in the long term, but this should be done after you've gotten a clearer understanding of the existing assets. So that's why the first step will be to conduct a network scan to identify all connected devices. Question 7. Your organization is expanding its operations globally, and the IT department is concerned about the security risks associated with new regions that have weaker cybersecurity laws. What is your first action? A. Perform a risk assessment for the new regions. B. Develop a new security policy for global operations. C. Implement end-to-end encryption across all regions. D. Hire additional security personnel in the new regions. For this, we'll be going with option A. You have to perform a risk assessment for the new region because it will help you to understand the specific security risks and vulnerabilities associated with expanding operations into regions that have weaker cybersecurity laws. This assessment will provide valuable insights into the potential threats, compliance requirements, and areas that may need additional focus or resources. Now, once you get a clearer picture of the risks, you can then move on to developing the appropriate security policies, implementing technical measures like encryption, or even hiring additional personnel based on the findings from the risk assessment. So the first step would be to perform a risk assessment for the new region. Question 8. Which of the following mitigates some of the greatest organizational risks and achieves the most cost-effective improvements in risk and security? A. Two-factor authentication. B. Publish policy. C. Install firewall. D. Awareness, education, and training. Two-factor authentication and publishing policies, as well as installing firewalls, are important security measures. However, they are only effective as the individuals using them. If the individual using it is not security conscious, they can run into human errors. So investing in awareness and training programs significantly enhances the overall security posture of the organization. Remember, the employees are the first line of defense for every organization because they can fall prey to phishing attacks. So if they are not educated enough about the security best practices, they can fall into a lot of human errors. So the thing that mitigates some of the greatest organizational risks and achieves the most cost-effective improvements in risk and security is awareness, education, and training. Question 9. Your organization relies on a third-party vendor for critical operations, and the vendor recently reported a cyber attack that could affect your services. What should be your first step? A. Terminate the vendor contracts. B. Conduct a risk assessment to evaluate the potential impact on your organization. C. Notify your customers about the possible service disruption. D. Immediately switch to a backup vendor. Looking at all these options, option A seems like a drastic decision. Option C is not really a wise decision to be the first step because you only create panic with your customers. A risk assessment, on the other hand, option B, will help you to determine the appropriate response based on the severity of the impact. So you need to do a thorough risk assessment because carrying out immediate actions without a proper understanding of the situation can lead to unnecessary disruptions or even financial implications. So the first step is to conduct a risk assessment to evaluate the potential impact on your organization. Question 10. During a security incident, a database containing sensitive customer data was breached. The IT team managed to stop the attack, but it's unclear how much data was compromised. What is your immediate next step? A. Notify regulatory authorities about the breach. B. Perform a root cause analysis. C. Initiate a forensic investigation. D. Communicate the breach to customers. Looking at all these options, the first thing that should be done would be option C, because for option A, notifying the regulatory authorities about the breach, it is an important action, but it should only follow after a forensic investigation has been done. Performing a root cause analysis, communicating the breach to customers, these are all important actions, but they should come after the forensic investigation has been done. So the immediate next step is to initiate a forensic investigation to determine the scope of the breach, including how much data was compromised. This investigation will provide the necessary insights to inform on your next step, including whether to notify customers or regulatory authorities. Question 11. EverlastCyber is planning for disaster recovery and business continuity. As the risk manager, which action should be prioritized to minimize the potential impact of a disaster on operations? A. Perform a business impact analysis. B. Implement redundancy in IT infrastructure. C. Develop a detailed communication plan for stakeholders. D. Conduct a tabletop exercise to simulate disaster scenarios. Performing a business impact analysis is very important because it will help to identify the critical functions and the potential impact of a disaster on those functions. The other options, implementing redundancy in IT infrastructure, developing a detailed communication plan for stakeholders, and conducting tabletop exercises, these are also very important components of the disaster recovery and business continuity, but they should be informed by the findings from the business impact analysis. So as the risk manager, the action that should be prioritized to minimize the potential impact of a disaster on operations would be to perform a business impact analysis. The business impact analysis will then provide the necessary insights to inform disaster recovery and business continuity planning. It will also help to allocate resources effectively and ensure that the most critical operations can be restored quickly after a disaster. Question 12. Which process provided the best information to respond to risks in an appropriate and cost-effective manner? A. Risk analysis. B. Risk treatment. C. Risk assessment. D. Risk identification. Risk analysis is a part of risk assessment, but it focuses on understanding the nature of the risk. Risk treatment is the action that is taken to manage the risk after they are assessed. Risk assessment provides the best information to respond to risks in an appropriate and cost-effective manner, while risk identification is the first step where risks are discovered and documented. However, it does not provide the detailed information needed for cost-effective risk response. So with respect to the question, the best information that will provide this is risk assessment. Risk assessment involves identifying, analyzing, and evaluating risks to determine their likelihood and potential impact on the organization. This process will help to prioritize the risk and guide the decision making on how to respond to them in a way that balances costs and effectiveness. Question 13. A board of directors is setting risk tolerance levels for the organization. You notice that the proposed tolerance level for IT risks is higher than industry standards. As a risk professional, what should you recommend? A. Accept the proposed risk tolerance level. B. Recommend a lower risk tolerance level. C. Implement stronger risk mitigation strategies. D. Benchmark against competitors' risk tolerance level. Implementing a risk management strategy and benchmarking against competitors are valuable steps. For the first one, from the question, of course, you are already not accepting the proposed risk tolerance level because it is way higher than the industry standards. So the best option will be option B, to recommend a lower risk tolerance level. So if the proposed tolerance level for IT risk is higher than industry standard, it could expose the organizations to greater risks that will lead to significant financial, reputational, or even operational consequences. So it is important to ensure that the organization's risk tolerance aligns with industry best practices and adequately protects against potential threats. By recommending a lower risk level, you help to promote a more cautious approach that prioritizes security as well as resilience. So this recommendation should also be supported by data and examples that illustrate the potential risks and impacts associated with a higher tolerance level. Question 14. At what stage of enterprise risk management do we first create the risk register? A. Risk analysis. B. Risk evaluation. C. Risk identification. D. Risk treatment. Risk analysis involves assessing the potential impact and likelihood of identified risks. Risk evaluation happens after the risk analysis, and it involves comparing the analyzed risks against the risk criteria in order to prioritize them. Risk identification is where the risk is first discovered and documented, while risk treatment involves selecting and implementing measures to mitigate and manage risks. So the point where the risk register is created is in option C, risk identification. It is during this stage that you analyze, you capture the identified risks along with the initial details, and this will serve as a key tool for further analysis, evaluation, as well as treatments. Question 15. Your company is facing potential regulatory penalties due to non-compliance with data privacy laws. To address this, you are developing a risk mitigation strategy. What is your first step? A. Perform a gap analysis to identify non-compliant areas. B. Train employees on data privacy regulations. C. Implement a data encryption solution. D. Hire a compliance consultant. A gap analysis would help you pinpoint exactly where the organization is falling short of compliance, and based on this information, you can then decide on the appropriate training, technology, or the resources that will be needed to mitigate the risk. Now, once you've identified the gaps, you can then go ahead to train your employees on the data privacy regulations. You can go ahead to implement a data encryption solution, as well as hiring a compliance consultant. So the first step here is option A, performing a gap analysis to identify the non-compliance areas. Question 16. At what stage are risks discovered, recognized, and documented in an organization? A. Risk analysis. B. Risk identification. C. Risk treatment. D. Risk evaluation. For this, we are going with option B. Risk identification is a stage where the risks are discovered, recognized, and documented in an organization. It involves identifying the potential threats or vulnerabilities that could negatively impact the organization's objectives. And once these are identified, the risks are now recorded in the risk register for further analysis and management. Question 17. Your organization is migrating its applications to a cloud provider. You are concerned about data security and regulatory compliance. What is the most effective action to reduce risk in this scenario? A. Conduct a thorough security assessment of the cloud provider. B. Implement encryption for data at rest and in transit. C. Review the cloud provider's certifications and compliance reports. D. Train your staff on secure cloud practices. Before taking any action, you have to determine how the breach at the vendor has impacted your organization. And once this impact is assessed, you can then proceed with other steps. So, a comprehensive security assessment of the cloud provider is critical to understanding their security posture, data protection measures, and compliance with relevant regulations. This assessment will help you to identify the potential vulnerabilities and ensure that the provider has appropriate controls in place, as well as verifying that they align with the organization's security and compliance requirements. So we're going with option A because this security assessment will give you the necessary insights to be able to make an informed decision about the migration, as well as establishing appropriate security measures moving forward. Question 18. A department head reports a critical security vulnerability, but insists that it is too complex to explain to senior management. How should you handle this situation? A. Escalate the issue to the IT team for resolution. B. Simplify the explanation and communicate it to senior management. C. Assign the department head to brief senior management directly. D. Delay reporting until more details are available. For this, there are no two ways about it. Senior management needs to be informed about critical risks, even if the details are complex. So it is your responsibility as a risk manager to translate the technical jargon into business terms so that they can be able to make informed decisions about their risk response. So you have to simplify the explanation and communicate it to senior management. Question 19. Which of the following is defined as the amount of risk on a broad level that an entity is willing to accept in pursuit of its mission? A. Risk appetite. B. Risk capacity. C. Inherent risk. D. Residual risk. Risk appetite is the amount of risk an organization is willing to accept on a broad level in pursuit of its objectives or missions. Risk capacity is the maximum amount of risk an organization can bear before it becomes financially unstable or threatens its viability. Inherent risk is the level of risk present in the absence of any controls or mitigating action, while residual risk is the remaining risk after the controls have been applied to mitigate the inherent risk. So, the answer here is option A, risk appetite. This is a strategic decision that helps to guide risk management practices and decisions about how much risk to tolerate when pursuing opportunities. Question 20. What plays the most significant role in timely reporting and responding to risk events, aiding the development of more effective and efficient risk management? A. Risk culture. B. Risk appetite. C. Good strategy. D. Internal policy. Risk culture plays the most significant role in ensuring the timely reporting and response to risk events. Risk appetite is used to determine the level of risk that an organization is willing to accept. Good strategy helps to align risk management with business goals. However, it does not guarantee timely action on risk events. While internal policy provides guidelines, but without a supportive risk culture, policies may not be followed or effectively implemented. So with respect to the question, the answer here is risk culture. A strong risk culture promotes awareness and responsibility for risk management across the organization, and it also encourages employees at all levels to recognize, report, and respond to risks as soon as they arise. This brings us to the end of the video for the CRISC certification. Don't forget to like, comment, and share, and also hit the notification bell to subscribe to our channel so that when our next informative video drops, you won't miss it. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.